Good morning, equestrians. Mike Nicodema here, Greenberg Trarig's Equine Industry Group. This is the next in our podcast series that we call the Equine Industry Legal Standard. Holly came up with that name. I love that name. So we're coming to you today from the beautiful National Polo Center in Wellington, Florida. We're in the Seven Chucker restaurant, and we have a very special guest. And it's very special for me because I've been trying to get this guy to sit down with me for over a year, and I finally have him. He's a man of many accolades. He's an icon in both the equestrian world and in the restaurant industry. Just to give you a sense of some of this man's achievements. He's the co-founder of the Outback Steakhouse chain. In 1994, he was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Inc. magazine. He's a champion polo player. His team, the Outback Polo Team, is the first team to win 5 U.S. championships. In 2013, he was inducted into the Polo Hall of Fame right down the road in Lake Worth. And the Florida Restaurant Association has given him a Lifetime Achievement Award. And this is just scratching the surface of this man's accomplishments. I bring you this morning the one and only Tim Gannon. Good morning,
Thank
Tim.
you.
It's great to see you.
Good to see you too.
It's great to see you. Now, we met the first time a year ago at Kalou's Restaurant, big equestrian haunt down here in Wellington. My partner, Bruce Rosetto, who you know very well, introduced me to you.
Yes.
And I'll never forget it because I was really excited about meeting you. And Bruce and I got there first. And then you came and you sat down. Bruce introduced you to me and you said, "Why should I talk to you?" I was like, okay. I was set back on, the man wants to set me back on my heels a little bit. So I had to draw on my 35 years of trial experience in the courtroom and come up with an answer. So I kind of told you about who I was and what my equine law group was doing. Then we had a great conversation. But I'll never forget that because nobody has ever said that to me before. And I thought it was awesome.
Well, I remember that, and I don't know why I was so abrupt, but you know, sometimes you go into lunch meetings, and especially if you're meeting an attorney for the first time, you're like, "Uh-oh, what is this about?" So that at least cleared the air, and it really made me feel comfortable from that moment on.
And I remember the other thing you said. You looked at Rosetta and you looked at me. It was, "Mike, I like good attorneys."
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I better be a good one.
I do. I love my grandfather was chief interrogator at Nuremberg for 10 years. Yeah, and he was also, the lead attorney down here for a lot of the big developers that came down in South Florida. In John MacArthur,
Sure.
MacArthur Dairy Farms, MacArthur, all Causeways, all that was, my grandfather was part of representing him. And so that's why I was born and raised here in South Florida. You know, my mother raised 6 children by herself. So, but my grandfather really was very inspirational in my life. And he taught me the importance of the rule of law, and how a good lawyer can guide bad behavior from other people and protect you from the evils in life.
Sure.
And that's true. If you look at what Nuremberg did, and what they tried to do was to put in rules for war. It was extraordinary what they were trying to accomplish, like criminal law for wartime crimes that had never been done before. Nuremberg was the place that did that. And so I really think lawyers and law and rules can guide us to a good place.
Yeah. Sometimes the profession doesn't always do that, but we do try our best.
It's when they don't follow the rule of law.
Exactly. You know, and you talk about your granddad and how he was such an inspiration in your life. And when I, mostly what I know about you is from friends, and Wellington is one of those communities, small place. We all kind of know each other. And yours is a great story. It's one of those rags to riches stories.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your grandfather had a lot to do with guiding you.
He did. I only knew him till I was about 10 or 11 years old, but I loved the way he worked. I loved his vision. Lawyers have visions, when they do contracts
Sure.
that last multi generations and never get challenged. You know, you put something and you etch it in stone, and you know. So what I took from that is, when I wanted to work in the restaurant business, is to develop things like a contract, and so it lasts forever,
Hmm.
like the bloomin' onion. You know, once I developed and created the first one in New Orleans, and we developed that one, I said I want this to go worldwide. I want it to, never be copied. I want it to be, where we don't have to keep working it and changing it and evolving it. It's the original recipe is the same one. We're over $1 billion in sales of that one
Wow.
product, and the onion commodity has not really changed, in its price. So it was really, a thing to how to set something up so it'll just keep on going generations after generations. It's really, that was my one. I wish I had 10 bloomin' onion
Yeah, yeah.
ideas, but I'm happy with that one because it put me in the polo field. It allowed me to come play the sport that I truly loved and was introduced to at 16 by my good friend Phil Heatley from algebra class in Lauderdale. He took me to El Paso. His father was a polo player and introduced me to the sport, and
Mhm.
that's how I had the lifelong dream and started playing polo at 40, because I finally accumulated enough money to play.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
then, but by 50, I won 5 U.S. Opens. So when I got into the sport, I
Amazing.
went into it very aggressively. And at 50, we were number one in the world, and I had 100 horses, two polo fields. My best friend and I had, a farmhouse that overlooked the polo fields, and we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. Played all over the world in Spain. We played the Bois de Boulogne in Paris. We played in England with Prince Charles for 10 years. Uh, Gallivanted in India. We played in Morocco and southern Spain, and we won a lot. We really not just went there with the team, but we we went there and came back with the cup. So that was, the gold cup in Spain and silver cup and all that. So it was, it's an amazing journey of, dreams come true,
Sure.
and in all, I well beyond, I would hope to win one U.S. Open, and to win five of them was extraordinary. Especially, we almost did five in a row.
Wow.
So
It's the two things, the restaurant industry and the polo world.
yeah,
Like, you don't necessarily think they both go together. But how did you now the Bloomin' Onion? That's tell us about that a little bit and how you
yeah.
developed the whole Outback
Well, I
Steakhouse
was in New
concept.
Orleans, and I was, looking for, uh, the big moment. Everyone looks for the big moment in your career, which will
Hmm.
launch you into, um, being a celebrity in your field, whether it's chief interrogator at Nuremberg, which launched my grandfather into being one of the greatest Chicago attorneys, in Chicago with George Halas, the Chicago Bears.
Sure.
He
Yeah.
was he was the attorney for he wrote the original NFL documents,
Oh, is that right?
so that are still in play today.
Okay.
So, so everybody's looking for that moment,
Hmm.
and I call it the Velcro moment, and I call it that because, the story of I was told, was George Mistral. D. Mistral was a Swiss watchmaker, and um, he went hunting with his big Saint Bernard dog in the Alps in Switzerland, and he came back and he had all the dog was filled with sand spurs, and he pulled these sand spurs off one by one, and he was a watchmaker, so he was intrigued by, the action of a sand spur and how it holds on so vigorously to a dog. And it was right at the same time that nylon, DuPont had created nylon,
Hmm.
1948, and nylon. So there was nylon fibers that George used to recreate the action of the sandspur. And so he recreated that and made it into strips, and that became known as Velcro.
No, really?
That's it. That's how
Wow.
Velcro was discovered. And but it was so the point of that story is look around you and wherever you're at, and there could be a Velcro moment.
Sure.
And mine was an onion. I'm in the kitchen, and here's an onion, and how do I make this onion like the most beautiful onion in the world, and one of the most tastiest onions, one of the with what they call um, addictable flavor
Mm-hmm.
that you just like, you like a Lay's potato, you can't eat one. So I was in New Orleans, and I was very impressed with Paul Prudhomme, the Cajun chef that created black and red fish. What Paul did was he blended spices and herbs in a package, in a blend, a spice blend, and then he cooked this at high temperature, 550 degrees, and created the black and red fish, which was a huge success across the nation. Put him on the map as the Cajun chef, and that black and red fish was used for President Reagan at the Economic Summit in Williamsburg in 1984. So that's how famous that dish became. So I watched Paul, and I watched how he blended spices, and I did that with the bloomin' onion. And I put all these spices and herbs together and blended them, and then I made a sauce to go in the middle of it, and made it a big onion. And so it was colorful. It was a flour. That came from a Japanese cookbook. The idea of how the Japanese people, origami or whatever, they make vegetables into flowers. They floral arrangements and decorative is how they do a lot with their vegetables that way, and they turn it into an art form. And so I borrowed that idea from them, uh, chrysanthemum, and we turned this onion into a flower, and then we add the spices to it and created something magical. And it's, like I said, over $1 billion
Wow.
in sales. It's been number one appetizer in casual dining for well over 35 years.
So you took elements of different cultures, from nature, from technology, and somehow put them all together to come up with this product.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, although we haven't, the only patented thing we did to it was we patented the name,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't really, it's hard to patent procedures.
Sure.
It's hard to patent spice blends because people can change them by 10% and not uh, and not infringe on your patent. So what I did was made it so complicated to make one that none of the other chain restaurants, uh, they tried, but they never were successful in executing a real great bloomin' onion.
Is this a procedure that you've actually written down so the folks at Outback can
Oh
recreate it
yeah,
every time?
yeah. We have a special name for the machine. We found a machine that can cut the onion, and we had. I was so happy to find this machine
Mm-hmm.
because we used to hand cut them, and they always looked a little different. So now we found a machine that would cut the onion and still leave a base of about a quarter of an inch. And every onion is shaped differently. They all have different shapes. So you have to have a machine that would conform to the different shapes of the onion. So we found the machine, and I was so happy to find it. I wanted to name this machine and give it a name that was the greatest name you could do, like Cassius Clay when he said, "I'm now Muhammad Ali."
Mm-hmm.
I loved when he did that. I'm the Muhammad is God, and Ali, or God is Ali, and Muhammad is praise to the God. So I said, let me do something, uh, and so I called it Gloria, and the long name was Gloria in El Chelsea Stale. Thanks be to God, thanks to the highest God. And I remembered that from my altar boy days. at the high mass. So Gloria is thank you. Thank you that we don't have to cut these onions by hand anymore. And thank you that you gave me a machine that can make such an onion into an art form.
Well, I'm gonna tell. Here's my marketing pitch for this podcast. I'm gonna tell my the patent attorneys in my equine group, who are the best in the country, by the way, this
Yeah.
story, because I think they're going to be fascinated about
Well,
it.
patents have limited protection.
Sure.
So it's really, if you want a patent, if you want to protect something, make it so no one else can do it.
Trade secret.
Yeah, make it to where it's so hard to do that everyone gives up. And that's why we designed our kitchens around making bloomin' onions.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a bank of fryers, 5, 6 fryer. Nobody would invest that much money, or they wouldn't retrofit their existing kitchens to make room for making the bloomin' onion. And each onion fills up one fryer. So you get an order for 10 onions, you need 10 fryers.
We were talking beginning of the podcast about your rags to riches story, and I think in the Outback Steakhouse story in particular, that's certainly true. You read things online about how in 1987 you and a couple of partners
Yeah,
in Tampa came up with this concept, and that you sold a saddle,
yes,
and you had only a couple of bucks in your pocket.
yeah.
Because I think young people need to hear this.
Well, yeah, I was, I was classic like everybody else struggling, you make rent and payments. And, at 40 years old, I was still struggling. I was still broke. I was still, trying to pay my bills like anybody else. And got an invitation from Chris Sullivan to come and start a new concept. He had followed my career in New Orleans, followed what I had done, and he was very enamored with my expertise on food and flavor. And he said, I would like you to be part and help us develop a menu for Outback. We didn't even have a name back then for Outback. It was just, we were going to do a casual steakhouse. So, so Chris invited me, and he caught me at a real low end, low tide of my career. And, I was broke, and I had the saddle was given to me when I was 16, and I had to sell the saddle, which is the last thing I wanted to do, because I wanted to become a polo player. And that saddle was my connection to the polo world, to the horse world. So I didn't want to sell the saddle. And that's why it was the last thing I owned. um, I was an entrepreneur, and I tried things, and some of them didn't work. And entrepreneurs live very risky lives.
Mhm.
You risk it all. You got to be willing to risk it all. And I don't recommend it for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. Is to be an entrepreneur, because you can be broke, and
Yeah.
not just broke, but you can be in debt. And I was in debt. I did a World's Fair project with Pete Fountain in New Orleans, a jazz in it, and it didn't work out. And the people at the World's Fair got bad press at the fair, and people we were doing 10,000 people a day, and then we went down to 1,500, and economics didn't make sense for the big kitchen that had 20,000 square feet restaurant. But it was a great club. I mean, Pete Fountain played, and it was really wonderful. Um, it left me with $250,000 in debt.
Wow.
At 18% interest rate.
Oof.
So you can imagine, for a guy making 100,000 a year, that strangled me.
Crippling.
So when they called for Outback, they said, we want you to come, and we'll pay you. I think my starting salary was like 50,000. It wasn't a lot of money, and they didn't take any salary when my partner started, Chris and Bob, Chris Sullivan, Bob Basham, didn't take any salary, because that's what entrepreneurs do. They start things, and they don't demand big salaries, to get something off the ground. You have to sacrifice. And that's what a lot of people aren't willing to do today. And sacrifice is part of the journey.
Yeah.
So anyway, I sold the saddle, got $250, and that was my gas money to get to Tampa from. I was in Houston, Texas at the time. I had just done a concept, and it didn't work. It was a diner, and it didn't work. And so, and that's the story of restaurants. Some work, some don't work. So I arrived in Tampa with $37, and I stayed at one of my partner's houses. He put me up, and they gave me an equity stake in the concept of Outback. 20% equity I got for my skill. It was sweat equity for my skill and knowledge of food. It was very generous. They were 40-40 and I was 20. And people say, why weren't you 33? I said, happy.
Yeah.
I was happy with any equity. They could have given me 10%. I would have been happy because that, became a $4 billion company. So, that's how I started. And I had two great partners. The other part of the story is polo is the oldest team sport in the world. It's the oldest team sport, the original team sport, started in Persia 2,000 years ago. And it was a team sport then, it's a team sport today. And life is about forming great teams. I'm not a great polo player. I won 5 U.S. Opens, but I put great polo teams together that became invincible, um, unbeatable, and we won. One of our semifinals by 14 goals over our opponent, and beat great teams. We beat, White Birch, and we beat Coca-Cola and Budweiser and all these big corporate teams. That we beat them, and we beat them hard, and it was a great victories. Um, but it's about the team. It's always about the
Sure.
team, and that's what you have to remember in life. That build a team, and you can accomplish a lot. You'll never do it by yourself. I'm not. I'm not a great polo player. I'm really not. You ask my girlfriend. I'm not that great of a chef, but I do know how to blend flavor and blend spices, and I do know what what I what I understand about flavor and spices. I understand it better than I think most human beings. I can taste cayenne pepper and tell you within 2 or 3 thousand BTUs what the heat load factor of cayenne
Wow.
is. Yeah. So it's an extraordinary, but you have to do that if you're going to be successful. You have to understand what makes a product great
Mm-hmm.
and what are the ingredients into exacting detail. That's the key word, exacting detail. What makes this product better than that product? And what is it? And then knowing how to identify it and then how to duplicate it. And we do bloomin' onions in 37 countries, in 22 different languages, in Japan and Brazil and China, in Beijing. So we have all kinds of restaurants all over the world, and we've taught this bloomin' onion
Amazing.
how to make it, and and that's an extraordinary thing.
Yeah,
So
sure. Tim, when I hear about your journey, it reminds me of when I was a young lawyer, and my mentor, the man who taught me how to be a jury trial lawyer, he always told me, Mike, you're going to learn a lot more from your failures than your victories, and you take what you learn and you move on and you become better. And like in restaurant business,
yeah,
you're not always gonna succeed. When I was a young lawyer, I was worried about if I don't win every case, if I don't win every trial, I'm a failure. But it's nobody wins all the time,
right,
and what you learn from those situations of failure ultimately lead to your success. And
right,
I think you're the epitome of that.
yeah. Well, and it's nice now to be here in this Chucker Seven, this bar, restaurant. That seventh chucker means there are six chuckers in a polo game. The seven chuckers where you come and hang out and enjoy the battle and the war that you just won, hopefully. And so this is where you have a cocktail and then tell the stories of your battle. It's very important to be able to do that, and it's a big part of polo. But this uh, this feels home to me to be here, and the reason my farm, in my heyday, was a quarter of a mile east of here, right, with two polo fields, 100 horses, and I played the first game I ever played on this field was my team on this field, and was part of the inspiration to build and have this stadium built by John Goodman, who was my neighbor. And I said, John, we have the land. You have 160 acres. Let's build the greatest club in the world, and he did. Um, and I'm proud of that. I inspired him. I'm member number one here of this club, and it's the home now that the National Polo, the USPA, purchased this facility last year in June, and it's now in good hands
Yeah.
with the USPA. They own it; and they'll own it forever, and I'm going to help develop the hospitality side to celebrate polo as one of the greatest sports in the world, sport of kings. But it's it's the sport of warriors. It's the sport of athletes. It's more than sport of kings. I think that limits how many kings do you know in the world? How many athletes and warriors do you know that want to play
Yeah.
this valiant sport, this heroic gladiator sport? It's thrilling to watch. It's thrilling to play, and and to be part of it today, even not on the polo field, but off the polo field. I'm very excited to be here as the chairman of the hospitality division here.
I think that's a great way to describe the sport as a gladiator sport, because my wife and I are from the show jumping world, and I
Right.
and I guess you could say the horse and rider are a team in show jumping, but in polo there are two teams, each horse and rider, and then the team
Yeah.
aggregate, and
Right.
and and it's just different. There are elements of it that remind me of soccer and hockey, with the shootouts
Yeah.
and things like that.
That's the big difference between polo and the other equestrian sports. Most of the equestrian sports, dressage, are singular. It's you and the horse, and I get that. But to have a team, and a team sport where you're relying on, I got to play with the best players in the world. Dolfo Cambiaso, the number one player in the world for 25 years. He's been number one player, and I played with him for 3 years. Well, longer than that, for about 10 years. I played all around the world. I played him in his home country in Argentina with him in Palermo on the number one field in the world with him, and won the Masters Cup. Um, so it's a sport, a team sport, that allows you to be on the field. And I mean, if you own the Chicago Bulls team, your basketball team, you don't get to play with Michael Jordan. You watch him,
Sure.
but you don't get to play with him. There's some pro amateur sports. Golf does it, and tennis does it. I've played some nice tennis pro-ams that have been thrilling and nice. But there's nothing like those are. I think when you play those kind of pro-ams, they're more for fun, and they're not taken as seriously
Hmm.
as a real tournament that the U.S. Open is. And so here, it's a real tournament. It's the highest level tournament there is, and you get to be out there with the greatest players in the world.
Yeah. Each sport kind of has its unique challenges, and then it has its things that just drive the athletes. Like
Right.
for polo, for you, what would you consider to be the biggest challenge in succeeding in the sport of polo, and what is it about polo that really exhilarates you?
Um, Everyone who's great in polo, who understands the sport, they always go and they talk about their favorite horse or their connection with the horse. And it's the same with dressage and jumping, you know. So it is about the horse. It is about your relationship with the horse, and your the speed, the bolting out and getting ahead of all the other players and taking the ball down the field and having an open run. It's Kentucky Derby. You're in a flat horse race with somebody. Gladiator, somebody's bumping you and pushing you as you're about to hit the ball and leaning way out of the saddle. So there's a lot of physical um, contact that's like football, and at high speed, at 35 miles an hour. when you connect at 35 miles an hour on a horse and you're bumping someone pretty dramatically, where they can almost stumble, and it's very challenging to stay on a horse
Sure.
when you're leaning out to lean way out of the saddle to hit the ball, and somebody bumps you, and then you go up on the ears of the horse. I mean, it's the best of the best riders. So the essence of polo is riding. Your ability to ride
Hmm.
determines your success. And so, what is your ability to ride? You start early. I started polo late, but I had a passion. I had a built up desire from 16 years old. I wanted to be a polo player. I wanted to be an athlete.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. I mean, it's just when I watch the sport and I see the athleticism of these riders,
yeah,
that they're basically bending out of the saddle, bending down
yeah.
hit the ball with the mallet.
And they hit the ball behind the tail of the horse, under the neck, between the legs. There's called the millionaire shot, where you take a ball and you strike the ball as you're galloping right between all four legs under the belly of the horse. That's a millionaire, because they say only millionaires can afford to do that shot, because it has a likelihood of hurting a horse. It doesn't, but that's where it's got its name from.
Yeah.
Only millionaires are willing to do that shot. But there's a lot of difficult shots, leaning over on the left side, because you can only use your right hand to swing the mallet. It's not an ambidextrous sport. Its rules are for right-handed people only. So, it's a very difficult sport, very challenging, exhilarating at the same time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
exhilarating, and you get a crowd, and then you play in front of a crowd of 5,000 people here. When people come on Sundays to watch polo, and it's thrilling. We have the stadium is box seats and champagne, and we do a beautiful job of celebrating the sport. And then we have a social club here, where all the people that want to meet all the polo players and want to be part of this community can join our social membership, and you get to come here as a member, have dinner amongst all the great Olympic riders and polo players and people in the sport. And so it's a beautiful way of how to be part of the polo community, is through our social club.
I got to tell you, my firm was one of the sponsors of the GPL
Yeah,
event, and so I was like the team captain,
right.
and we had a tent, and we won. We ended up playing Chip McKinney's team
Yeah,
in the finals, and it went down to a shootout, and we won. It was great, and
yeah,
Chip's a great friend, but the guys on the team, on our team, they were so grateful for the sponsorship, and they
yeah,
would come up to me, and I was wearing the same shirt they were wearing.
yeah,
They were the greatest guys.
yeah,
It was just, it felt like family. It felt like home. I mean, we're
yeah,
going to do it again next year,
yeah,
and it was just great. I just loved it, and I
yeah,
love coming here.
yeah.
And I'm really interested to know, like, what. So now that you're the chairman of the board of this entity that's going to reimagine or revitalize hospitality and
Right.
things like that, what are your goals? What's going on here? Because
Well, we want, during the season, for you to come here, and every night we want you to come meet Salvatore Ferragamo and drink his wine from Tuscany. He
wow,
will fly over and pour his wine. He has Il Boro. It's a super Tuscan wine, highest ratings, and he'll do a wine dinner, and we'll feature the food from his cucina at his villa, and then we'll entertain you in Salvatore. You'll get to meet him. You'll get to come here and hear Adolfo Cambiasso, number one polo player in the world, talk about his career. You hear from Michael Matz, who is the number one Olympic jumper, wonderful guy, and trainer of Barbaro.
mm-hmm.
Trained Barbaro. And you will meet the greatest equestrian leaders in the sport. Laura Kraut. Laura spoke at our speaker series. She's an Olympic trainer, winning everything.
Sure,
Laura is an amazing woman. Todd Minikis will speak next year. He's an Olympic champion in the jumping world. So we have, we're going to try and get Margie Engel, all these people that have dedicated their lives to equestrian disciplines, that have really uh, a lot to share about how they started in the horse world, their humble beginnings, and how they worked their way up into being number one in the world. You know, whether it's jumping or dressage or horse uh, racing, you know, all the different disciplines, you know, will speak, and you'll be able to come and listen and meet these people in small, intimate dinners. So,
Wow.
and then, you know, so that's a big part of what we do. We do a lot of wine dinners where we feature like Salvatore and different, you know, people from Camus and um, Penfolds, one of the great Australian wines. Um, and we do it in a beautiful venue that overlooks the field in candlelight dinners. So it's a very romantic, enticing, intimate gatherings where you're among the best in the world, you know, from an equestrian standpoint,
Hmm.
and we all share this love of horses, the love of great horses, of athletes, of, you know, horses that are fit, well trained, well taken care of, um, athletic. You know, you look at what these horses can do, both in terms of dressage and how they can dance to music and do all of that, and then how they jump 6 feet in the air, and then how they play polo, racing up and down the field. We did that event for the Miami Project. We raised a lot of money here for charities. Spinal cord injury was a Miami Project. Mark Bonaconti, we raised $1 million for his event. Uh, so there, we had about 6 big galas, you know, that we raise over $1 million per
Hmm.
Boys and Girls Club, all those local events, along with national cancer group and different things.
Well, I'm excited because of you, my friend. My wife and I are becoming members of the
We
Polo
are
Club,
thrilled to have you.
and I can't wait.
We're thrilled to
And
have
I
you.
really can't wait.
We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you. So now let's have a little fun with my podcast guests. I always do something called a word
Okay.
association.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 3 words, one at a time, and you tell me without thinking a lot the first word that comes to your mind, and
Okay.
that'll kind of tell us a lot about
Okay.
Tim Gannon. So I wrote these down. The first one's easy. Horses. What's the first word that comes to your
Love.
mind? Love.
I mean, yeah, you know, we're all in this to be around horses. I have 2 in my backyard, in my house. They stick their heads through the kitchen window for treats every night, um, and uh, and I spend time with them every day, walking the pastures, riding, you know, around the polo fields. Yeah, it brings a smile, and it's, you know, it's horses are what this community that separates, that makes Wellington Wellington.
Hmm.
I mean, our horses. You know, this used to be, you know, tomato patch place, where agricultural. So the horses came, and look what happened. You have, you know, all these wonderful equestrian people all living together in a community, sharing their stories, sharing their competition. So horses love.
Yeah.
Simple one.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree. Integrity.
Um, uh, the key to heaven. Integrity is the key to heaven. Integrity is about your name, who you are, and how you get to heaven. Did you do the right things in life? Is your word good? Do you say things and follow up? I, integrity is everything.
Yeah.
It's the key to life, is having integrity. Um, I mean, it's the one question you ask. If you've ever been in a bad relationship, there's always been an issue with integrity,
Sure.
or, you know, or lawsuits are all about lack of integrity
Hmm.
from somebody, right? I
Absolutely.
mean, if you have integrity, you don't have lawsuits. So
That's a good way of putting it.
it'd put you guys out of business if
Yeah.
everybody had 100% integrity. So
Yeah. That's
yeah,
great. Last word. A word that I know you know a lot about. Motivation.
um, I think of motivation. I think it is uh, the driving force of life. It's, you know, if you've ever been depressed, We all go through this.
Hmm.
And you lay in bed, you go, I just don't know whether I want to get up today.
Yeah,
You know that,
sure, absolutely.
and that happens to everybody in life. Versus the other side of it, I'm going to have the greatest day of my life. And you get up and you go to the gym, you work out, you go run 3 or 4 miles, you have great meetings, you surround yourself with great people, and you then put together teams and then you motivate people. If you can motivate people, you that defines you as a leader. If you can't motivate people, you'll never lead.
Hmm.
And the reason we're here in life is to become, in some fashion, a leader, someone that will follow, have a reason to follow what we say, what we do, and who we are. I mean, our purpose in life here is to leave a footprint, and the footprint is about who's going to follow you, and so leadership and motivation and getting people motivated is, um, you know, if there was a great book, and there are many many great books about how to motivate people, and it goes way down deep, but it's really about integrity. It's having integrity, and then people follow you.
Love it.
Yeah,
Love that.
yeah.
Last question, my friend. Tim Gannon, entrepreneur, horseman, polo player, everything that you are. What advice do you have for young folks coming up through the ranks that either want to be in the restaurant industry, the equestrian world, or both? What are the elements of success that you can impart upon them?
If I look at my life and I say, where were the times I was the least successful, and then where are the times that I was the most successful, it's never about how hard I worked, because you can be very unsuccessful and work very hard, and be working very hard, right? And not be successful. You can be very successful and not work as hard as when you did when you were unsuccessful.
Sure.
So what's the difference? The difference is very clear. When I was unsuccessful, I was not on a good team. We were not motivated together. There was lack of integrity in the group. When I was on a great team and we carried each other's flag, we supported each other, I was successful. It's as simple. So my advice to people is, f- find your team. Find find your Velcro first. Find the thing that motivates you, that wants you, that you can take out to the world. Find that thing, whether it's law, skill, orator, whatever that is. Find that skill. Once you have that skill, put it together with a team, and then take that team forward and build upon it. That's what we did at Outback. And we did one thing that was very important at Outback. We made our managers, instead of general managers, they were proprietors. A proprietor is an owner, and so we gave them an equity stake in the business at Outback. We made them. They wrote a check to work at Outback, and they wrote a check for $25,000, so that they could have their name above the window, and they became proprietors. They became owners of that business. So so own it, and they became big team members. We had very little. We had the lowest turnover in management in the history of the restaurant business for
Really?
many, many years at Outback, because we had committed managers
Sure.
and they were making more money than most of the people. Why? They were paid on an incentive basis, where the more harder they worked and the more results they got, the more they got paid. So it's just like Chick-fil-A now. It's the same story with Chick-fil-A, how they motivate their people, because they share, and there are guys at Chick-fil-A making $300,000 or $400,000 a year, running one Chick-fil-A.
Because they're all in it together.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
it's a team sport.
Amazing. Well, Tim, we did it. We
Good.
got through this.
Yeah,
Wonderful job. It was
thank
an
you.
honor.
Thanks.
It
It's a
was an honor.
pleasure.
And I'm going to be around this place a lot. You're not going to
Great.
be able to get rid of me.
That's great. Well, we look forward to it, and we have Carol Thompson, who runs our membership program, and anybody who's interested, just call the National Polo Center and talk to Carol Thompson, and she'll guide you we are increasing our membership, and hopefully we'll fill it up by the end of next year.
I will spread the word, my
Yeah,
friend.
good.
The one and only Tim Gannon. Okay, folks, that's it for today.
Thank you so much.
We'll be back soon with another episode of the Greenberg Traurig Equine Industry Podcast, The Legal Standard. Take care, everybody.